Welcome back to the Forge. This lesson is about leadership. It's one of my most favorite topics, and I hope it stimulates some thoughts and some good ideas. Remember, this is a way, it's not the way. So take all the information in, keep what's useful, reject what's useless, and make your own way. Let's move forward. So, lesson plan, we're going to talk about what is a leader. We're going to create a definition. I know I've talked about that, or I will talk about that in other lessons. It's very important that we clearly define our terms and we clearly set our expectations. So, what is a leader? Then we're going to go into why do groups even need a leader? Why can't we just all do our own thing and make that work? And then last, we'll talk about how to become a better leader. And I think that's the goal of most leadership classes. But first, we've got to get through those initial definitions and figure out our why before we can figure out the how. So that's what we're laying out here. And again, if you have questions, please leave them in the chat, hit me up on email or shoot me a DM and we can discuss it. I love talking about this topic and I'm always interested to hear new ideas. So, what is a leader? A leader is an individual that inspires a group to accomplish a task that they would not otherwise complete. This is my definition. It's a little bit different than if you just looked up leader in the dictionary. And I'll explain why I feel like this is a more apt description. Typically, people who are motivated and goal oriented don't need a leader. They're going to accomplish their task and they don't require anyone else to guide, motivate, inspire, and develop them. They're headed that direction. So they don't need a leader. They need what's known more as a manager. They need someone to help them coordinate their activities and their efforts so that it's more efficient. A manager has no need for the inspirational and developmental mindset that the leader has to have because they're just putting people in the best places to succeed. A leader is someone who is trying to convince, for lack of a better term, people to do things that may not be in their own personal best interest. And this is really evident when you start looking at leadership in the military, where you're asking someone to put themselves at greater risk to protect other people. And so it's really obvious to see in those instances, but it can be in any case, right? When you're asking a group of people to stay late for practice so they can get better so that the team will be more effective, they wouldn't do that by themselves because they would have already done it if they would have. Does that make sense? We're not trying to just you know reinforce good behavior. We're trying to correct bad behavior. We're trying to increase our capability and we're trying to push people in a direction, pull them, whatever you need to do to get the entire group as a cohesive unit to improve. So that's the difference between a leader and a manager, and I think that's why we need to be clear when we talk about the difference between leadership and management. Both kind of work together, but we need to make sure we have a clear delineation between the definitions. So leaders inspire people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do, whereas managers just sort of coordinate and organize people that were already moving in that direction. Why do groups need a leader? Why can't we all just do our own thing and everybody go and we'll just figure it out in the end? Well, as you can see in the picture, if two people get to make their own decisions, oftentimes they work against each other, and the rowboat doesn't go anywhere when you're rowing against each other. So the leaders put everyone on a common path. They guide everybody towards a common goal. And in that, they are able to make a team more effective than just a group of individuals. So the first step to that is defining the vision and the end state. The end state is pretty commonly just a goal. It's a mission. It's an objective. It's whatever you're trying to accomplish. We're trying to win the state championship in basketball. We're trying to, win our regional debate. Whatever it is, you have an end state. You have a goal you're trying to accomplish, and then your vision is sort of a subjective kind of overarching theme to what you're trying to do. So a vision would be, we want to be better than we were last year. We want to be good people. We want to uphold the honor of our school, or the vision is something much bigger that everything operates underneath, whereas the end state is a very specific goal. But the leader has to clearly define those and then clearly communicate it, because then you empower everyone on your team to pursue those two things independently. If they don't know what they're working for, how do they know what they need to be working on? How do they know what they need to practice and try to get better at? So you need to lay that out very clearly for them, and so that they know, hey, we're all moving in this direction, and this is why we're doing it, and this is what we want to happen in the end. So let's all figure that out and get on the same page. The second step is probably the most complicated and difficult as a leader, is to assess the team and determine required adjustments. As a leader, your job is to be paying attention to what your team is doing, how they're doing it, and what needs to improve. And sometimes that means having, certain individuals work on certain things and get better at them. Sometimes that means the entire group needs to work together and get better at teamwork. But you don't know that if you're not conducting these assessments. And if you're just giving out arbitrary tasks, if you're just assigning extra practice to random people, they may not need it, and it can be counterproductive. It can hurt morale, and it can create a loss of credibility for you as a leader, and people will start to kind of revolt against you and not do what you ask them to do or do what you tell them to do, because it doesn't make sense. So you need to be assessing the team and figure out what needs to happen. Then you need to determine the required adjustments that need to be made. Sometimes that means cutting somebody loose. Sometimes that means helping someone or assigning extra practice, or working on something specific with an individual. Sometimes that means holding the entire team there late and working on a particular item. Whatever the case is, your job as a leader is to determine those kinds of things and figure out what's going to help the team the most. And then the last step, I guess, is inspire and motivate. So, as we mentioned in the last slide, leaders are different than managers in that leaders have to sometimes create that inspiration and that motivation. They have to work within the confines of what they're doing to try to get their team to do something they most likely don't want to do. And so we have to figure out great ways to be more inspirational, to lead from the front, to be motivational. Now, that works different for everybody, and it works different for every audience and every team. Sometimes you need to yell at people. Sometimes you need to be really kind. Sometimes you need to be soft spoken. Sometimes you need to be out in front and suffering. Sometimes you need to be in the back and pushing. It just depends on the situation. So when you're assessing your team, you have to determine, okay, well, how can I help to inspire them? How can I help to motivate them? What do they need from me as the leader? And so if you look up on YouTube, most of the leadership articles that you find are going to fall into this category of inspiration and motivation. I feel like if you're doing the first two steps, defining the end state and then assessing the team, then the last two are going to happen, because people are going to see that you're invested as a leader and you are going to create improvement, which then leads to additional motivation. And they're going to start taking ownership because they know what the end state is, they know what the vision is, and they're all working together as a team to move towards it. And so they're going to be inspired by the improvement, by the teamwork, and seeing their teammates succeed. So I'm not as worried about this one, and it's going to come naturally, but it really need to focus on the first two. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of the issue. How do I become a better leader? I like to use these metrics, these character traits, as kind of guidelines, because there's really no way to know if you're a better leader or not. You have to set some sort of metric in which you can grade yourself and say, how am I doing? I like to use the idea of obviously success in the mission accomplishment, but then also effectiveness and improvement over time. So these 7 character traits are laid out in such a way that if you're hitting all of these metrics and you can say, yep, I am good to go on all of these, which is a really hard thing to say, then you know you're doing all you can as a leader. But these are character traits that the Army developed, and they made a little acronym, as you can see. It spells leadership because Army people have trouble remembering things, but they really encapsulate the idea of what a leader should be. So I'm going to go through each one, and if you have questions about them, please let me know. But they're fairly self-explanatory, and a lot of them overlap. Remember, this is a way, it's not the way. So these are character traits that I believe will help you become a better leader. But there's probably others, and there's other leadership models that you need to take in. So if these don't speak to you, if you don't understand them and they don't make sense, then seek out other information, but use this as a backbone to grow from instead of just starting from scratch all the way. The first trait is loyalty. And I think it's important that it's the first because this one is going to make or break you as a leader. If you show disloyalty as a leader, you're going to be ostracized very quickly. A loyal person is someone who stands up for their fellow team members and supports the team. By doing your share, you show your loyalty to your team. And as a leader, you demonstrate loyalty to your team by sharing in their experiences, especially when you don't have to. So let me ask you this. What would inspire you more? Your leader walks in, your coach, your captain, whatever. They come into the room, they say, hey, everybody, we have to clean up the lockers. We have to mop the floors. We got to take out the garbage. We got to wash the toilets and sinks and Windex the mirrors. Get started. And then he turns around and walks out. Okay? That, whatever. Or let's take scenario two. The leader walks in, says, hey, we got to clean up the lockers, mop the floors, take out the garbage, wash the toilets and sinks, and Windex the mirrors. So let's get started. Then he turns and grabs the toilet brush and walks to the bathroom stall and starts cleaning. Which one's going to inspire you more? Obviously, the second one. It's self-explanatory. Someone that's willing to share in the suffering is going to promote others to do the same. And there you're going to gain more respect, and you're going to show, hey guys, I'm right here with you. I'm in this as well. I'm not separate from you. I'm a part of you, and that's really important. That's why I use this quote from Ruth. I think it's fantastic. Her story is amazing. If you're not familiar with it, I would look into it. It's really, really impressive. But the quote is, "Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." For those of you that don't know the story of Ruth, she was a widow, and her mother-in-law also was a widow. But Ruth was not a Hebrew, and so, but her mother-in-law was. So when her mother-in-law wanted to go back to Israel, Ruth said, "I'm going to go with you," knowing full well she was going to be an outcast. As a widow, first off, she had no rights, and as a woman. And then, secondly, as a non Jew, she was going to be even lower on the social status than just being a widow because no one was there to take care of her. No one was going to help her. But she knew her mother in law would most likely die without her. And so she was loyal and committed to her mother in law and to God and wanted to show that and stay with her mother in law. So, great example, excellent for loyalty, and again, I would recommend reading more about her. She's very inspiring. Second character trait is duty. All right, I've got the just Googled the definitions, and they're right there. A moral or legal obligation or responsibility, or a task or action that someone is required to perform. So doing your duty means more than just carrying out those assigned tasks, right? Anybody can do that. But duty means being able to accomplish tasks as part of a team. So you fulfill your obligations as part of your team every time you resist the temptation to take shortcuts that might undermine that integrity of the final product. So do your job, but do it to the best of your ability. Everyone's not going to have the same responsibility, and more will be asked of some than of others. That's to be expected. The leader needs to be beyond reproach and set the example of always doing their job. So there's an adage that I've heard before, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's, if you're the leader, everyone on your team is going to do about 10% less than you. So you get to decide where to set that bar. If you're not showing up on time, your people are not going to show up on time. If you're not staying late, your people aren't going to stay late. If you're not working hard, your people aren't going to work hard. You set the tone, and that's part of the duty and responsibility of the leader, is to make sure that they're staying committed and that they are setting a good example for everyone around them. And most of the time, doing your duty means you doing things you don't want to have to do. Like they're not fun. Nobody likes them, but they need to be done. And instead of grumbling and fussing about them, you just get after it and you work hard and you knock it out, because that's going to show everyone else that it can be done with a good attitude and it can be done effectively and with proper motivation. You are the one who is going to set the tone for the team. So keep that in your forefront of your mind. Pay attention to the way you behave because everyone else is looking to you to know how they should behave. The next trait is respect. Respect for ourselves guides our morals. Respect for others guides our manners. And I think these two things work interchangeably, or not interchangeably, but together to show a positive respect for everybody in a respectful environment. So everybody's heard of the golden rule, right? Most often it's misquoted, but it comes directly from the Bible, Matthew 7:12, and it says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Everyone understands that. If you don't like something done to you, why would someone else like it when you do it to them? It's very easy to understand that. So treat others as you would want to be treated. It's not complicated, it's not rocket science. If you like people being polite to you, then be polite to other people, and you're going to see that in return. Respect doesn't mean that you are not direct. It doesn't mean that you cannot correct poor behavior or discipline or any of those kinds of things. It means doing so in a manner in which is respectful of that individual as well as the team. Everybody has had someone that they've worked with, whether it's a coach or another player, where they were just very disrespectful, and they're screaming at people and they're using foul language, and it erodes the confidence that you have in those people as well as the relationships on the team, and that's just going to drive down your effectiveness. Nobody likes someone who they feel like is disrespecting them. It can be very difficult when you are trying to correct someone and they don't feel like they've done anything wrong, and it can be complicated, but that's your job as a leader, is to navigate those complicated waters. But respect is going to go a long way in gaining that credibility. And most of the time, if you're respectful with everybody and you have one person who is just all upset and feels like they've been disrespected, everyone else on the team is going to be on your side and kind of say, hey, look, it's the leader is being respectful, you're taking it the wrong way. So understand that you, again, are setting the tone for the team. So be respectful, and others will be respectful as well. Selfless service. I love this one. This one is great. It's putting the welfare of the team before your own. Selfless service is larger than just one person. The basic building block of selfless service is the commitment of each team member to go a little bit further, endure a little bit longer, and look a little closer to see how he or she can add to the effort. So, similar to the example that we talked about for loyalty, selfless service is all about putting the needs of others before yourself. That doesn't mean that you always need to take a back seat, right? It means doing things with the intention of supporting the team and not for yourself. So, I'll give the example. Um, the Warriors, they're a great basketball team, and Steph Curry shoots most of their shots. Well, it may seem a little selfish that he's shooting most of their shots, but his job on the team is to shoot most of the shots. So if he were to all of a sudden just say, I want to start passing the ball all the time, they're going to lose a lot more than they do if he's shooting, because they need him to shoot. They need him to make shots. That's not being selfish. He's doing his role. He's doing his job. He is supporting the team with the intention of the team being successful. Now, he gets personal glory from that, and that's fine. But his job is to score three pointers, right? And so if he's doing that, then the team wins, then everybody improves. That's a very confusing, kind of uncommon way to look at selfless service, but doing your job to support the team is really important. And that counts for the low status jobs just as much as it counts for the high status jobs. You know, if you're the leader, sometimes you're going to get a lot of attention, and you're going to get good attention, and it's going to be great, and people are going to celebrate you as a leader. But when it goes bad, it's on you, and you're going to have to deal with that. All of those things come with the job, but your job as the leader is to serve your team. It is to make your team the best it possibly can be, and selfless services is a huge part of that. So you're giving up yourself for the good of the group. Next trait is honor. Stand for what is right, even if that means standing alone. I love that quote. I think it's fantastic, especially for a leader. The leader really needs to be the focal point when it comes to honor and set a positive atmosphere for maintaining honor in the group. Honor is a really difficult thing to define. People have won the Medal of Honor for sacrificing themselves and also for saving themselves. So which one's more honorable? It just depends. It depends on the situation and the scenario. Honor is a culmination of all of the other values on the list. They put it in the middle because, if they didn't, it wouldn't spell leadership. But in my definition of an honorable person is you do what you say and you say what you do. So it sounds very, very simple, but it can be really, really complicated because we want to be nice. We want to please people. We want things to be easy. And most often, things are not easy, and conversations are complicated and they're difficult. And sometimes you have to tell people when they're not doing their job and they're not holding up their end and they need to get better or they need to move on. So as a leader, you're going to be faced with a lot of these difficult conversations and difficult decisions. But if you are consistent and maintain your honor and doing things for the right reasons, not just because they're easy or not just because it's a path of least resistance of conflict, then you will always have that to fall back on. You can always say, I did the right thing. It wasn't the easy thing. It wasn't the polite thing necessarily, but it was the right thing. And that means so much when you're wrestling with some of these decisions that you're going to have to make as a leader, because you're going to have to make a lot and they're going to be very, very difficult. You may have a friend on your team that isn't holding up their end, and you're going to have to recommend that they get benched or they need to do extra practice or they need to they're not showing up on time, and you're going to have to confront them about that. And that's a tough thing to do, but if you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, it makes it easier. Integrity is it's very similar to honor. Like I said, a lot of these overlap, but this one is a little bit more specific to honesty. So integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So, for example, let's say your coach, you did something wrong, whatever, you showed up late, I don't know, and the coach says, all right, you got to do 100 burpees after practice. And so you finish up practice and you're tired and you start knocking out your burpees. You get to about 20 and the coach says, all right, finish up on your own. I'll see you tomorrow, and leaves. You could easily get up and walk away and no one would ever know that you didn't finish your burpees, but you would know. And that integrity is really important when you start having to tell others what they should be doing. Because the first thing somebody's going to say to you, if they think that you lack integrity, is they're going to call you out on that time that you lacked integrity. They're going to say, hey, you didn't finish those burpees. I know because I walked in the gym and you were gone, and that was like 30 seconds after practice. And so integrity is something that you need to really be paying attention to, and you need to prize and value above a lot of other things, pretty much anything, just because once you lose it, it is so hard to regain. Integrity is one of those things where it takes years to build, but seconds to lose. You could make 99 decisions correct, and every single time you're honest and truthful and you do the right thing, and then that one time that you skipped out on your burpees and two people saw it, now they don't trust anything you say anymore, and they're going to start even going back on the things that you said before. So understand that integrity is a very, very important asset and attribute to have as a leader because it is so fragile. But it's easy if, again, you're being honorable. An honorable person has integrity. So if you're maintaining your integrity, then you're also maintaining your honor, and those things go hand in hand. And then that'll lead to doing your duty and all the other traits that we've already mentioned. So again, they all work together, but they give you a framework of individual things to focus on. So integrity, again, like I said, and I'm harping on it because I really want you to understand how important it is to maintain your integrity when you are in a leadership role, because there is nothing more humiliating than being called out in front of your whole team for lacking integrity, because it's over and you've lost them. So don't do that. Maintain it at all cost. even if that's uncomfortable and creates conflict. So the last trait is personal courage, and this one I think is probably the easiest for people to understand. But I'm gonna throw a little curveball at you when we go through this. But I'm gonna read the quotes. General Patton, for those of you who don't know, great World War II general, very famous. Whole movie about him. It's okay. It's really long. Check it out. Anyway, he says all men are frightened. The more intelligent they are, the more frightened they are, or more they are frightened. The courageous man is the man who forces himself, in spite of his fear, to carry on. So I think that's really important. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means that you are acting in spite of your fear. And fear takes on a lot of different faces. All right, some people are afraid of public speaking. Some people are afraid of heights. Some people are afraid of spiders. It doesn't really matter. Fear is fear. And it's really hard to overcome fear in any case, much less when you're on a stage in front of people. So if you're on a team and you're the leader of that team, it can be intimidating. It can be scary. When you realize my decisions are going to affect all of these other people, it's a tough thing to swallow, and people can freeze up. They have anxiety, and they make bad decisions. But personal courage is something that we need to lean on, we need to develop, and we need to also focus on as far as decision making and just putting ourselves in situations where we're a little bit uncomfortable so that we can learn how to operate in spite of that fear. And that's where the courage comes in. So the curveball I was talking about is personal courage for a leader looks a little different than the personal courage for an individual on the team. What do I mean by that? So the individual needs to be brave enough to take the shot, to be able to hit a spike, to be able to, whatever sport you play or whatever thing you're doing, the individual needs to have the courage to do a task. The leader has to have the courage to make decisions and put people in risks, in harm's way sometimes, but also at risk. um, as a leader, you may be called upon to decide who's going to take the last shot to win the game, or who, you know, who's going to do whatever activity that has the highest risk of failure. That may or may not be you as the leader. Most of the time, it'll be somebody else, and you have to have the personal courage to make that call. Because the worst thing you can do as a leader is not make a decision. There's you A wrong decision is better than no decision, because if you are making no decision, you're letting the circumstances dictate the outcome, and you might as well not be there at all. So it's better to make any decision than no decision. So you need to have the courage, and you need to be brave enough to make those calls and accept the responsibilities that come from whatever decisions that you made are going to happen, because your job as the leader, again, is to make those decisions. You're trying to guide your team to a goal, to an objective, and your role on that team is to make decisions. So personal courage for a leader looks a little different than personal courage for an individual, but understand that they do work hand in hand. So develop that, grow that, find out what makes you anxious, find out what makes you nervous, find out what makes you afraid, and start dosing those things. If you don't like heights, start working your way up on heights. Get up on a step ladder, and then get up on a ladder, and then get up on the roof. Whatever. Don't get up on the roof. That was an example. Please don't do that unless you're professional. But you see what I'm getting at. Like, you want to try to overcome that fear, because any fear you overcome is going to make the next fear easier to overcome. If you're afraid of talking in front of a group, talk to your dad. When you're done with that, talk to your whole family. When that feels comfortable, talk to your class. And by the time you're done talking with your class, you'll be able to talk to 100 people. It won't matter. But unless you start working on those fears, they're never going to get better, and they're going to inhibit you as a leader and as an individual. So really focus on this last one. So leadership, just a couple of closing points. Um, Leadership can be trained and developed. A lot of people don't think that. They think that you're born a leader or you're not. That's not true. Some people are better than others, sure, but it's like any other skill. Some people are going to be better at golf the first time out than others. That doesn't mean that the second person can't get better. It just means they have a different starting point. Everybody has a different starting point at any task that they're trying to learn how to do. But you have to practice, you have to train, and you have to get better. And it doesn't matter how good you are when you start, you need to continually learn and improve. Focus on getting better. Focus on doing more than you did yesterday. Every chance you have to observe, to run some mental exercises, to put yourself, visualize yourself in certain situations, that's going to help you be a better leader. Do that. Do that often. Put yourself, volunteer for positions. A thing I like to tell the people that I work with and that I train is that you already are a leader. You may not realize it, but people are looking at you all the time. They're always observing. People are watching you. You may not think that other people are looking up to you, but they are. There are other people who want to be where you currently are, just like you want to be somewhere where somebody else is. But now you have to decide what kind of leader you want to be. Do you want to be the kind of leader that only cares about themselves? Do you want to be the kind of leader that props everyone else up? Do you want to be the kind of leader that shares in the glory and in the pain? Do you want to be the kind of leader that people look back on and go, wow, they made me a better person? That's the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be the kind of person that in 10 years, if I meet somebody that was on my team, that they come up and give me a hug and they say, man, it's great to see you. That's my goal. So figure out what kind of leader you want to be and work towards that. Take care.